All right, Nathan, I might throw to you again and talk us through this case study.
So this case study is very, very close to a real client situation of mine. And the reason I like it is one of the most perfect situations for this to occur where all of the ducks lined up. And so if anyone is thinking about doing this, they want to be as close to this kind of situation as possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's when some of these ducks don't stack up, the whole thing can fall over. So I think if we start off talking through what could work really well and why it worked, and then we can sort of lean into what could go wrong and things to watch out for so people can think about, that could be me. Oh, no, actually.
All right.
Maybe not.
Well, I might read it and then we'll talk about all the details. Gail and Peter have decided to move in with their kids, Mary and Paul. They sell their home for $1 million and gift the money to Mary and Paul as consideration to move in, which is the quote-unquote entry contribution. They've gone with option 3 as the entry contribution is substantial, $1 million. So we need to check the reasonableness test. Was that the tongue tie thing that you warned me about?
Yep.
Reasonableness test to see how Centrelink will regard it. Gail is younger than Peter at 65, so we will check the table for her age, getting a conversion factor of 21.48, multiplying that by the annual partnered pension rate, which is, as at today, 43.5K. Now,
I think that's slightly old.
Yeah, so this is an older case study, but the principles remain.
The principles are the same. The rates will be slightly different. Yeah.
So you get a figure of 939,000.
So I just want to jump on that quickly.
Yep.
Because it says we use the younger age. That's not because we chose to.
Right.
It's what you do.
Right.
So the first thing to think about that is if you've got situations where one party is actually quite a lot younger than the other, it can play in your advantage.
Right.
But you use the younger person entering that agreement when you're looking up the number on the table to work out the reasonableness test figure.
Yeah, cool.
And the younger you are, the better the multiple is probably something to take away from that as well. So these guys being 65, it's quite high. The older they get, that 80-year-old case we talked about before, that number's a lot smaller.
So they can give 939,000-ish to the kids as consideration when they move in, and Centrelink will ignore that amount when it comes to their asset test.
Correct.
Awesome. Any amount above that figure will count on Gail and Peter's Centrelink assessment for 5 years.
It's a deprived asset.
Yes.
Yep.
Mary and Paul can do what they want with the money. So Mary and Paul could literally own the house outright and not need Gail and Peter's money. But they're like, look, we're going to move in. Here's $1 million. Thanks for letting us live down the back of your house.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no condition on what they have to do from the Centrelink's perspective.
Yeah, cool. Chances are the current home of Mary and Paul is not quite set up to have an additional 2 adults move in while maintaining some semblance of independence between the two couples. Mary and Paul could use this money to renovate the home or buy a new, larger home with a substantial mortgage and pay a lot of it off with this money. So talk to us about these real-life details here.
So what did they do? So in this situation, we've got so Peter was quite he'd suffered a workplace accident right before he retired.
Right.
And so because they're quite young, and it really put a pin in the whole idea of retirement. So Gail's still working, but she's also taking care of Peter, but she also loves taking care of the grandkids. And so she's the one that got in touch in the first place. And she's like, I've heard about this stuff. She'd already done the numbers. And she was like, I just want to make sure we do it right. But what she actually lost was any social network. She was going to work. She was taking care of the kids. She was taking care of her husband. And in this situation, they were like, well, we want to do this because we're going to move in. They're going to add another floor to the house. And we're going to live in the bottom section. They're going to live in the top section. We'll have a communal living area. And it also meant that the grandkids are closer, less commuting, and that the kids they're moving in with can also help out with Peter. So she could spend more time enjoying herself as well. And so it was kind of this perfect scenario from that perspective. But also, in this instance, they'd lived together before.
Yeah.
So during COVID, they moved in together and they lived together while they were saving for this house.
Right.
And they got along. And I think that's, of all of the technical Centrelink rules and all the rest of it, that is probably the most important thing.
Yes.
If you're doing something like this. You have to live with this person for the lifetime.
Yeah.
It's in the contract.
Yeah.
And that's key.
And it may work better with some cultures. And, I'm not moving with my parents, but I know others that would. So, yeah, it's that's an interesting one. So, back to the cricket here. So none of them wanted residential care?
No, don't. In fact, a big part of this was also they never want to go into care.
Right. I mean, no one wants to go into care.
No.
But sometimes it might happen.
It was part of the agreement.
Right.
And this, we'll get into, I suppose, some of the technical stuff about the agreements and what you can and can't include.
Yes.
In a second. But I think there was some expectations.
Yes.
And really thorough conversations around expectations and around boundaries.
Yeah, and it's interesting here from an estate planning thing, Paul is the only child.
Yeah.
So if there was other kids, might not work. Now, let's talk some broader risks of using the granny flat provisions.
Yeah, I think there's more that can go wrong that can go right with these, which is why they're so particular. So a lot of the time we've spent talking about Centrelink because that's what people think about using them. But the two sides to a granny flat right, there's the Centrelink aspect, what you give to Centrelink is the information, but you're going to contract it. You're going to put it down in a contract.
Right, okay, so it's not just do the razzle-dazzle in real life and tell Centrelink and we've got this granny flat provisions. You'd want to do a contract with the other person to the lifetime tenancy and whatnot. Then you say to Centrelink, hey, this is happening.
Correct.
So you've got to walk and chew bubblegum with both of these
Correct.
things.
It's a life interest.
Yeah.
And it works like they all do. So, and when you do that, you've got to make sure you line up your ducks. So like one of the first things, or the hardest things to think about is what do you put in that contract? So you can put everything in there, which is great until something changes. How do you adhere to all of it? You put nothing in there, which is great until you need to enforce something. It's so hard to get that right broadly. I think on a case-by-case situation, you both get financial advice, you both get legal advice, you come to a heads of agreement, and then you go and get it contracted, and then you sign it. You know what you're in for. For, our case before, our case study, they included some aspects in there around minimum levels of care and sharing household duties.
Right, in the contract.
In the contract.
Right, okay.
But they didn't end up putting a lot of detail into what that meant because they didn't want to create difficulty. So one of the advantages in that situation was that money did some renovation work. And it's probably good to highlight this too. When they did it, it wasn't one transaction. It was a series of transactions. So Centrelink would have loved it when I sent it to them because I sent them a cover letter that explained every single transaction and every single invoice so that they could add it all up to match off the number.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be one transaction. But in doing that, the kids had a bit of a surplus from the reno. They were able to knock down their mortgage almost entirely, and both of them reduced their days at work. So they were able to contribute. But factors can change. Job situations can change. Who can care for who? All that kind of stuff does come into it. So if you over-contract, it's difficult. If you don't put anything, it's hard to enforce.
Yeah, and I think these granny flat provisions, it's almost in the investment product world, I always say like the investment bond is the product where the pendulum swings the most. So it's like it's either really, really good for someone and perfect, or the other way, really, really don't even go there.
Yeah.
And this kind of granny flat provision, it is like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a real Goldilocks vibe to it.
Yeah, multiple kids and, health. Like, I don't know, it's just...
Let's add another kid into that case study. Let's say there's a sibling and mum and dad have just sold their main asset. They've still got some super and a bit of money. They've given that across. The kids have now got to care for mum and dad, but also they got all the money. That money's gone. There's no clawing that back in the estate.
No, because the estate's emptied.
Yeah. So how do you balance that in there? Well, we'll do 50-50 of all our other assets between our two kids. Oh, yeah, but my brother got all that money already. Yeah, but it doesn't count.
Yeah, so you can't – so, for example, if you had the $1 million and there was 2 kids, you can't say we're doing $1 million under granny flat, quote unquote, 500 lands in the lap of the people that you're living with and the 500 in the other kids, no, that 500's deprived.
Yeah.
It's going to the place that you're not living.
Well, if you gifted it, it would be a
Yes.
deprived asset. Yeah. But also, let's say you said, we'll give $1 million to the kids we're going to live with, and all of our money goes to the other child. That's a terrible plan because that will be challenged. There's the concept of consideration within estate planning. The kids who had mum and dad live with them for a long time could say, hey, I didn't get anything in this will. I challenge it. And it, they'll have a case. So I think that's the estate planning piece is, again, bringing lawyers in. Financial advisors can help with the financial aspects of it and the Centrelink aspects of it. Lawyers are going to be able to help with the contractual side and then the estate planning implications as well.
So, question, I've got friends. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions that are just food for thought. I've got friends, one batch of friends, they bought a big property with their parents, call it 2 acres, 3 acres, whatever, okay? There's a big house on it where they live with their kids, and then up the back, the parents live in their cottage. Now, they just did it, so they're all on title, and they did it 70-30 because that was the proportions. Now, that's cleaner because the 2 that live in the cottage, mum and dad, there's 5 kids and just one of them live on the property. Like the granny flat provision may have only worked if there was the single child there.
Yeah.
Or you still wouldn't have needed it, potentially.
Yeah.
But I think in that situation, and because these people both eligible for Centrelink, do you think they would have been better off if they did entertain a granny flat provision, or it doesn't matter that it's just a 70-30 title because Centrelink will just deem the 30% that they own of it as their house?
Yeah, so if they're still homeowner, it would depend on the other assets they have.
Yeah.
How much Centrelink they're getting, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the factors go into it. How old were they when they entered the arrangement, all that kind of stuff. But if they're able to make it work, still get the pension they need, still meet their needs, but reduce all of these other risks.
Yeah.
I would say they could still tick the box,
yeah,
right?
and because if in that situation they did the granny flat provision where they're like, all right, we're going to put we'll just say the property was worth $1 million, right? We're going to put our $300,000, give it to the kids on site, but then the other kids, there's an estate planning snookering because then that money is gone from the estate. So I think that way they've done it is good. Hey, it's Glenn here. Thank you so much for watching today's video. You made it to the end. Can I ask a favor? Can you hit that like button and maybe hit subscribe if you want to get notified when we release further videos just like this one, whether you watch the Money, Money, Money podcast or Retire Right. And remember, if you want to learn more about investing, I've got an investing book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing, and there's a link in the description to get your hands on a copy. Thank you so much. Bye.